How much does the Broadway industry actually make? And what is its impact on New York City tourism? Let's unpack. Hey friends, if you're new here, my name is Katharine Quinn. I'm a 30-something living in New York City and working on Broadway. Last year, I was assisting the writing teams of Shucked and How to Dance in Ohio. This year, I have made a pivot to marketing. I have worked on The Great Gatsby, The Roommate, Spells of the Sea at the Kennedy Center, Hip Hop Nutcracker on tour, and many shows in development. As always, the YouTube fam is the first to find out, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. And let's discuss how much money Broadway actually makes New York and some of the implications there. Let's start with the big picture. According to a 2019 study by the Broadway League, Broadway contributed $14.7 billion, that is B, capital B, $14.7 billion to New York City's economy in the 2018-2019 season. This figure includes not just ticket sales, which reached $1.8 billion, but also the ripple effect of Broadway-related tourism on hotels, restaurants, and shops. Worth noting, we've not hit quite the same numbers since we did pre-pandemic, but they're comparable. But what does that mean in real terms? $14.7 billion is equivalent to the entire GDP of a small country like Nicaragua. It's also more than double the economic impact of all 10 of New York's professional sports teams combined. Broadway is not just entertainment, it's a major economic engine for the entire city. Also, let's talk about the employment impact. Broadway is a massive job creator. Hello. It's me. Hello. I want you to guess, just guess. Broadway directly employs about how many people in a typical season? Leave it in the comments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, did you guess several hundred? Did you guess a couple thousand? 87,000 people. 87,000 people. This includes not just the performers you see on stage, but also musicians and conductors, stagehands and technicians, ushers and box office staff, theater managers and administrators, marketing and PR professionals, costume and set designers. And that's just the direct employment. When you factor in the jobs created in related industries like hospitality and retail and restaurants, the number swells to nearly 100,000 jobs. To put that in perspective, Broadway employs more people than the entire population of a lot of small cities. It is a massive contributor to New York's job market. Time to talk about tourism. Broadway is one of New York's top tourist attractions, drawing in millions of visitors every single year. Annually, the Broadway League, which is a trade organization that represents presenters and producers of Broadway shows, commercial theater across the country, they release a demographics report of who is seeing Broadway shows, what the economy looks like, etc. A lot of the numbers that I'm citing here are from the 2018-2019 report. Obviously, the report was dark from 2019 to 2022, and we have a really comprehensive guide to the 22-23, and I will link my video about it up here. And then we have a more brief guide to 23-24, and I think I have a video about it, and if I do, I'm gonna link it right up here. At any rate, we're not quite to our pre-pandemic levels, but we're moving on that. In the 2018-2019 season, Broadway shows welcomed 15 million attendees. That is more than all of the New York City's professional sports teams and every New York City museum combined. Tourists historically have made up about 70% of Broadway audiences. So 30% are your local yokels. Beyond that, people coming in from elsewhere. And those Broadway tourists are staying in hotels, eating at restaurants, shopping at stores, visiting other attractions. On average, Broadway tourists spend $762 per person beyond their show ticket during their visit, which is a lot of economic activity generated by the Broadway industry. I'm very curious about people's perception of New York and Broadway post-shutdown. It does feel like there is a sizable shift. I've done lots of research on my own amongst my own followers. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Katharine Quinn, shameless plug. But I do a lot of polling and fact-finding on my own as well. I recently did a poll of about 500 people and discovered people's feelings about why Broadway is so uncomfortable, why people are not returning to the theaters hastily, etc. I'll link one of those right up here. But it's really, really interesting to see what the trends are looking like. So I'm curious, from your perspective, has your opinion of the city changed? Has your feeling about Broadway changed? Are you more or less informed about what's going on Broadway? Do you feel like you can keep up with the churn of shows, all of the shows changing over time? You know, like intermittently I'll look at Reddit Broadway and see somebody ask about Beetlejuice or Les Miserables, and like I need to break it to them, but neither of those shows are on Broadway anymore and haven't been for years. I think that Broadway has a bit of a brand problem. I talk about it in other videos, but can you imagine if we could remedy that brand problem, if we could capitalize on the things that we're doing well even more, the impact that we could have. As mentioned previously, Broadway extends well beyond just the 41 theaters. Restaurants in the theater district rely heavily on pre and post show meals and drinks. Many have special pre-theater menus. Local retail shops benefit, hotels benefit. Broadway is essentially its own ecosystem in Midtown Manhattan. As much as Broadway gives, it also does receive some assistance from the city. So let's talk about that. Direct financial subsidies are relatively limited compared to other industries, but the city does provide some indirect support. Tax incentives for theater rehabilitation. Boy howdy, I wish we would take them up on it more readily. Zoning laws that protect theaters from being converted to other uses. Marketing support through New York NYC Co., which is the city's official marketing organization. There is also the New York State program for musical and theatrical productions, which offers a 25% tax credit on production costs. This is a relatively recent development, 2021 post-shutdown, to help Broadway recover. So there is some assistance, but we don't actually really have any major subsidies that we're receiving. Which brings us to the Broadway Paradox. While the industry is profitable, our shows are not. Despite the massive economic impact that we just discussed, 80% of Broadway shows do not recoup their money. 80%, 8 out of 10 shows, don't make their money back. So while Broadway as a whole is a profitable marketplace, supporting a vast ecosystem of businesses and jobs, the majority of individual Broadway productions lose money. So how can this be? Okay, there are several factors at play here. First one is high production costs. Mounting a Broadway show is incredibly expensive. The typical musical can be anywhere from $10 to $30 million to produce. Number two, ongoing expenses. So just getting a show up and running is not enough. Operating costs are astronomical. High weekly running costs, including theater rent, salaries, marketing, etc. Limited capacity. This is a huge issue that I'm incredibly passionate about. Wouldn't it be nice if we figured out live streaming and pro shots so that we could integrate those into the marketplace and find a solution for the fact that some people will never make it to Broadway, and also so many more people could see our shows and we could sell so many more tickets. It would be so nice. Anyway, even sold out shows are constrained by the number of seats in a theater and the number of performances possible per week. Last year's marketing report, the 23-24 season, we were at about 89% average capacity, which is solid, and it usually hovers around the 90% mark. While there's always more butts that we can get in seats in some shows, I still think it would be really nice if we sold virtual tickets. Short runs. This is a huge issue, especially now. Many shows close before they have a chance to recoup their investment, especially if reviews are mixed. Okay, for what it's worth, I don't actually totally agree with that. Reviews. Sometimes they matter. Water for Elephants largely got incredibly favorable reviews. I don't know what the case will be by the time that I release this video, but as of the time of recording this, in theory, it is hemorrhaging money. It is not making good money right now, and I think it was a New York Times critics pick. The Great Gatsby on Broadway, not a critical darling, somewhat famously, and at least as of the time of recording this video, is making $1 million every single week. Reviews, I don't think are the thing. I think the things that are vital at this time are, do people know what the show is? And oftentimes that's about marketing if it's an original show, or a revival kind of does some of that legwork for you, and whether it's based on existing IP like Back to the Future, like The Great Gatsby, like The Notebook. But even being Notebook, that show is closing. So I always say that the ideal time to start marketing a show is like right now, in development, well before you get it to Broadway. If you start marketing when you're on Broadway, you're absolutely sunk. You're totally screwed. There are a few exceptions to this, but it's rare. Shows don't really sell themselves the way that they used to, and that could also be me being naive, thinking that shows sold themselves, but my perception is that, well, first of all, margins are worse than they ever were, so the possibility of failure is higher than it's ever been before. But also, it felt like in an analog world where everything was just physical advertisements and TV show appearances, those were the things that really made a difference in terms of selling tickets. That's not the case anymore. You can't rely on a CBS Sunday morning special. You can't rely on a big ad in the New York Times. Those are not the things that sell tickets. Incidentally, social media is a thing that sells a lot of Broadway tickets, and it's just harder to quantify the return on that investment. Anyway, broader conversation, but short runs. I think something that kind of like bums me out is that the adjacent businesses or the vendors for the individual shows, so concessions, marketing, merch, all of those individual facets can be profitable, whereas the actual production likely won't be. Potential solutions here. 1, embracing technology. Friends, I love using digital tools to streamline both production processes and reduce costs, as well as introduce live streaming. Diversifying your revenue stream, so exploring opportunities in streaming and ancillary products. I love going to theater in person. That is always my preference. However, not everyone can make it to New York City, not everyone can make it to Broadway, and that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to enjoy Broadway shows. There is a reason why slime tutorials are so popular. Can you imagine what would happen if you could watch a live stream once a quarter and experience Jeremy Jordan, but then also go see his understudy, but then also go see someday when there are replacements? Like, you could see all of those things, and instead of searching message boards and YouTube for slime tutorials, you instead could just like pay a sum of money, support the theater, and see it live from your living room. I just think it would be great. I also think that our development processes are way too bloated and long right now, and that's easy to say from the comfort of this living room, not actively trying to produce my own musical right now. I think that the norm of having 10 years from idea to Broadway debut, and sometimes up to 30 years in the case of Harmony, is brutal for shows. I think we have to shorten that timeline. I do think that there is merit to advocating for more government subsidies. Honestly, I'm incredibly cynical about whether or not that will be a fruitful thing. And then I'm also incredibly curious about like collaborative models, how we partner with nonprofits. I have an entire video about it, I'll post it up here. The model of transferring from City Center or transferring from a nonprofit where they rehearse for a week. It's all about a pared down production with an incredible cast and an orchestra on stage. And they can command incredibly high ticket prices, even though there's not a lavish set, even though it was a week to production instead of years. So I think there's a lot that we can explore there. So essentially, the Broadway marketplace, profitable. Broadway shows are not. I'm so curious to know what you think. As always, I am not here to be a source of empirical truth. I am here to invite discussion. So please engage in the comment section. I'm so curious genuinely to hear what you think. I do my best to respond to as many comments as humanly possible. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, it genuinely means so much to me and my new YouTube channel. If you like, comment, and or subscribe, it's the surest way to let the YouTube algorithm know what wonderful people to push these videos out to. People just like you. I always invite you to follow me on Instagram and TikTok @Katharine Quinn. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the comment section. Bye.